Story 1: The Empty Highway. The engine hummed softly as Jake drove his old pickup truck down the desolate highway. The clock on the dashboard read 2:37 a.m. He yawned, feeling the fatigue settling in after a long day of work. The road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated only by the dim glow of his headlights. His eyelids grew heavy, and he fought to keep them open. But the monotony of the road was hypnotizing, and soon enough, he found himself drifting into a half-conscious state. Suddenly, a flash of movement jolted him awake. He slammed on the brakes, heart racing, as his eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Nothing, just darkness. Jake shook his head, chalking it up to exhaustion. But then he noticed something peculiar. The road, which moments ago had been empty, now had a figure standing at the edge of the highway. Jake squinted, trying to make out details in the darkness. It was a person, their silhouette barely visible in the dim light. Uncertain, Jake hesitated. Should he stop? Offer help? But something about the figure unnerved him. The way it stood so still, so unnaturally still, sent shivers down his spine. As he approached, he could see the person more clearly. They were dressed in tattered clothes, their face obscured by shadows. Jake's grip tightened on the steering wheel, a sense of dread washing over him. Just as he was about to pass, the figure suddenly lunged forward, arms outstretched. Jake screamed, slamming his foot on the gas pedal, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He glanced in the rearview mirror once more, heart pounding in his chest. But the figure was gone, vanished into thin air. Jake's mind raced with fear and confusion as he sped down the empty highway. Minutes turned into hours as Jake drove, the encounter replaying in his mind. What was that thing? Where did it come from? And more importantly, where did it go? Exhausted and shaken, Jake finally reached the safety of his home as the first light of dawn painted the sky. But as he stepped out of his truck, a chilling thought gripped him. What if he wasn't alone on that highway? What if, out there in the darkness, something was still watching, still waiting? Story 2: The Shortcut. The night was thick with fog as Sarah navigated her way through the winding back roads, trying to find a shortcut home. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard, 1:47 a.m. She had stayed at her friend's house longer than she intended, and now she was paying the price with this eerie drive through the countryside. The narrow road seemed to stretch endlessly before her, flanked by tall trees that loomed ominously in the darkness. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she pushed through the fog, her headlights barely piercing the thick mist. Suddenly, she saw something up ahead, a figure standing in the middle of the road. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she slammed on the brakes, her tires screeching against the pavement. The figure was close now, illuminated by her headlights. It was a man, dressed in a tattered coat, his face obscured by the shadows. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she stared at him, her mind racing with fear. Should she stop? Should she offer help? But before she could decide, the man stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. Sarah's pulse quickened as she fumbled for her phone, her hands trembling with panic. She needed to call for help, to get out of here before it was too late. Just as she dialed 911, the man spoke, his voice barely a whisper against the silence of the night. "Please, help me." Sarah froze, her finger hovering over the call button. Was he really asking for help? Or was this some kind of trap? But then she saw it, the desperation in his eyes, the vulnerability in his stance. And in that moment, Sarah made a split-second decision. She rolled down her window and called out to him, offering him a ride to the nearest town. The man hesitated for a moment, then nodded gratefully and climbed into the passenger seat. As they drove through the foggy night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease. There was something off about this man, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on getting him to safety. Little did she know, the real danger was just beginning to unfold. Story 3: The Vanishing Gas Station. The dashboard clock blinked 3:24 a.m. as Emily cruised down the deserted highway, her tank dangerously close to empty. She cursed herself for not filling up earlier, but now her only option was to find a gas station before her car sputtered to a stop. Just when she was about to give in to panic, the glow of neon lights appeared in the distance. Emily let out a sigh of relief as she approached the small gas station nestled on the side of the road. The station looked run down, its paint peeling and windows boarded up. But beggars couldn't be choosers, and Emily pulled into the empty lot, grateful for the chance to refuel. As she stepped out of her car, a chill ran down her spine. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas. Emily shivered, suddenly feeling very alone in the darkness. But she shook off her unease and approached the gas pump, swiping her card and selecting the type of fuel. As she waited for the tank to fill, she glanced around, her eyes scanning the empty lot. That's when she saw it. A figure lurking in the shadows at the edge of the gas station. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she squinted, trying to make out details in the darkness. It was a man, dressed in ragged clothes, his face hidden beneath a tattered hat. Emily's instincts screamed at her to run, to get back in her car and drive away as fast as she could. But before she could move, the man stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she backed away, her mind racing with fear. "Please, help me," the man whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of the pumping gas. Emily hesitated, torn between her instinct to flee and her desire to help. But then, as quickly as he had appeared, the man vanished into thin air, leaving Emily standing alone in the darkness. She blinked in disbelief, her mind reeling with confusion. Had she imagined the whole thing? Or had she just encountered something beyond her understanding? With trembling hands, Emily finished pumping gas and quickly got back in her car, eager to put the strange encounter behind her. But as she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed something truly inexplicable on that lonely stretch of highway.